All right. So I knew I was baiting this call, this next one. I did it. I said veganism. And if I say veganism, I can bet you dollars to donuts that Chase is going to call in. Hey, Chase.
Yo, what's happening?
What's going on, man?
You rang?
Well, you rang. I kind of wanted to open up the show. WWJD didn't seem to get a lot of pull, and I'm happy to talk about other things. And you always have a discussion in mind when it comes to veganism. So I'll try and follow up here. You and I had a really good discussion in the after show last week, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I encourage people to check out the Discord after show. If you're doing it again today, it's a good time.
I am.
Um,
I'm not going to be doing it for a really long time because there's another content creator who I am going to help a little bit with getting their stuff, maybe, with their process. But I will be there for a little bit. But it says today you wanted to talk about Christianity's mixed messages on animal welfare.
yeah. So I figured I could maybe mix veganism with the topic you wanted to talk about, what would Jesus do?
Okay.
I'm an atheist vegan, but my parents are the opposite. They think it's okay to kill and eat animals because the Bible says so. And I try to point out, that in the Garden of Eden, it was vegan, like in Genesis 1:28 and 29, God says that I've given you every seed-bearing fruit and every green plant, and they shall be your food. And that even the animals, like lions, apparently were only eating these plants. And so,
I
uh,
mean, okay, but if I'm going to put on my
well,
Christian hat just for a second to argue back with you on that, I would say anyone who's had a period can tell you that those times are over.
yeah, yeah, I hear you. But in Isaiah, it says, "I do not delight in the blood of bulls," and that in the end times, the wolf will lay down with the lamb, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. Right. And so the point I'm trying to make is that if in the beginning times and in the end times, like in God's ideal state, it's nonviolence, it's veganism. So why shouldn't we strive to fulfill that right now as much as we can? That's kind of a
Interesting.
point I try to make to them.
So I Chase, you're making me put on the Christian hat. It's interesting because I never took those as literally as that. When I thought about the wolf lying down with the lamb, I thought about the imagery that often portrays Jesus as the lamb, right? In the book of Leviticus, you have all of these rules for how to sacrifice an animal, right? And
Yeah.
and you'd sacrifice it a certain way, just like the discussion that I'd had, the call earlier with Trent. You'd kind of put all of the sins of the group onto this goat, and you'd sacrifice the goat. Sacrificing bulls was another thing. And so the blood of bull's blood rings to me as people still paying sacrifice and penance for their sins instead of treating Jesus as somebody who was sacrificed, who was the lamb that was sacrificed for the sins of humanity. And so when the wolf lies down with the lamb, in my mind, I thought to myself that was symbolic of, you know, uh, uh, Christians and their persecutors living in peace. And
Ah,
when I thought about bull's blood, I thought about no longer needing to sacrifice in order to absolve your own sins, because instead of the blood of the bull, it would be the blood of Christ. So I never took those verses as literally as you bring them up. But I guess, I
okay.
mean, that's an honest interpretation. I just never thought about it that way.
Yeah, and it's hard to really understand exactly what to do because there's conflicting verses. It seems like Jesus multiplying the fish. Now I don't know if that was actually killing fish. But
Well,
uh,
that sounds like a great, like, if we could just do that, I bet you vegans would be
yeah,
on board, right?
just multiplying dead animals instead
I
of killing a bunch of them. Yeah,
Well, or
um,
just like that makes me think of lab grown meat. That
yeah,
was never part of a thinking creature. Just like, here's fish. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like there's a New Testament verse that implies that no food is unclean. Um, and then there's the idea of dominion, us in Genesis of humans having dominion over the animals. But then that calls into question, what does dominion really mean? Does that mean the right to exploit, and kill, or does that mean like that we have a responsibility to protect those who are weaker than us because we have power over them? We shouldn't exploit that power, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, so okay. You mentioned two things here. One of them, there are unclean animals in the Old Testament, like straight up,
Yeah, in the Old Testament, like pigs.
and hooved,
Yeah,
cloven feet animal. Yeah, that kind of thing.
yeah,
Couldn't eat those.
and yeah, but in the New Testament, it seems to imply that that's done away with. That old rule is no longer applicable. Is what Christians seem to be using that verse to do when I'm doing vegan activism on them.
Yeah, they bring okay. And then the second thing you're talking about is dominion. Now, that's something I want to dig my teeth into a little bit. So I'm trying to address all of your points here. So if I'm backtracking, it's only because I don't want to leave things unsaid.
Sure.
That's that, caveat aside, I want to talk about dominion. So I think that part of the way that I think about animals still has to do with the dominion that is talked about in the Old Testament that is given to Adam. Because Adam wasn't just another animal in the garden, right? Adam was supposed to be the caretaker, right?
Yeah.
And I think that influences the way that I think about protections versus rights. We've had this discussion a couple of times. Do you remember when I've talked about protections versus rights?
We didn't dive much into it yet, though.
Okay, this is a good time to do that. So, protections are similar to rights, but not quite. A protection is something that you would grant someone or something that is not able to, capable of, or has responsibility for themselves. So there are protections for the disabled that, like I've worked in special ed for, many years. I have a lifetime of, growing up in my mom's special ed classroom. And there are kids who are going to need guardians their entire
Yeah.
lives. That's what those specific people who are nonverbal, who need who need protection, right? It's not okay to mistreat another human being, especially if they can't ask for help, right?
But they still have human rights, though, right?
They do. It's because we recognize the humanity in them. And then
Well,
moving down to the next piece is what is a protection? I think protections are different from rights. Protections are something that I don't know. It's kind of magnanimous about humans, isn't it? That we would want to, let's say, protect an endangered species from going extinct. It's not.
sure.
It's not necessarily. We don't necessarily always do it because we're these wonderful, empathetic creatures. We want to preserve the environment. We want to keep the
Well,
biodiversity on Earth. At least that's
well,
my view.
yeah. I mean, well, if we could dial it down to an individual animal, like an individual, you know, human, like you were mentioning, that like they can't speak for themselves, they can't defend themselves really, but they, haven't done anything wrong, or like the idea is, I believe, whether we call them rights or protections, I think rights might be a better application. That like I think some animals should have rights to not be exploited and abused and killed needlessly, things like that. I'm not sure, like with domesticated animals like dogs and cats, like pets, like if they have legal rights or if it's just legal protections or if it's, because they have a guardian. But in any case, like I think that the same rights or protections that we give to dogs and cats should actually be expanded. Like that, they need more protections or rights, but also that these rights or protections should apply to cows and pigs and chickens, etc., because there's no legitimate difference between these animals.
Well, your use of the word legitimate is kind of weird there. So,
Sure.
I think that right, self defense is a right.
Yeah.
You should be able to protect yourself. That's inherent. Um, I think that I could not imagine a cow or a chicken putting up a good defense for itself. When it comes to arguing its case on a thing.
Well, yeah, but neither can the disabled person or a child.
That's true. And I think that's why I brought up protections. And I think it gets us into a sticky gray area here. And I want to try and explore this with you. So let's think about this. People always bring up, a wolf eating a deer or whatever, a lion eating a gazelle, and say we don't blame the lion, right? We don't call the lion a murderer because we treat the lion and the gazelle as a different class apart from humans. We see them as something that, deserve to be like they deserve to live and thrive, but we're not going to hold them responsible for those actions. We don't even hold them responsible for their actions when they kill humans. We go, well, that's just nature. That thing happened. But they don't go, was it premeditated? We're not looking for murder in the third or second or first degree when it comes to, what was it?
Some,
Was it Roy or Siegfried? Which one of them got eaten by the tiger?
oh yeah, I
Right?
can't remember. I don't think he got eaten. He got just like
Just
attacked
mauled?
a little bit, but yeah,
I don't think it was
yeah,
more than a little bit.
yeah.
But like
But I mean,
we're not bringing those animals up on murder charges to see if it was,
yeah, but neither do we do that with small children. Again, like a lion is maybe, or a pig, like a lion is probably like as smart as a 3-year-old child or a 4-year-old or something, so we don't hold those individuals of either species morally accountable or legally accountable for their actions because we don't consider them moral agents.
Right. And so we kind of hoist that that right that they're under the guardianship of a parent or some kind of guardian, right? That guardian takes that responsibility until that child grows old enough to be able to take that responsibility on themselves. So what if they can never take the responsibility on themselves?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
just like a child, well, like a child with a severe brain damage or learning disability that will never grow to be smarter than they currently are as a 3 or 4-year-old.
right. So I don't think they ever take on those responsibilities, and they shouldn't
Yeah,
have to. We
exactly.
we recognize that we have empathy there, and they have a different
Yeah.
set of rights than other people. They have less rights. They just do.
They have different, yeah, like they're not maybe allowed to drive a car, for example,
I mean,
but they still have,
like
but they
oftentimes
still have
though,
rights.
they're not even allowed to
They
live by
still,
themselves.
yeah, I hear you, but I guess they still have the right to be free from violence
I
if it's unnecessary, unless they're attacking somebody, then we do what we got to do.
well, in that way, I think we have a different standard because we wouldn't necessarily do that with animals. If an animal is fighting another animal, we won't necessarily jump in and help. But if a human being is being violent, we will seek to restrain them and to prevent that violence, right? Isn't that us keeping them separate, doing something different?
Well, like I would intervene if I see animals like attacking each other or being attacked, stuff like that. Unless I think that there's
But
going to
but
be some
but
negative down.
you're
Well,
not.
hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Unless I think there's going to be some negative downstream effect of intervening that would be even more harmful because I lean towards utilitarianism.
But I mean, I'm thinking like if two lions are duking it out on the savannah, I'm not going to jump in like a guy in front of the bar going, "Hold on, guys, hold on. Let's not do this. Let's think this out, everybody." You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, no, I
like,
hear you. I agree. I agree. I'm
yeah,
just saying, like, if a lion was attacking a gazelle, if I could intervene, like, and save the gazelle, I would. But
Chase.
the problem is, but the problem is, like I said, if we stop that whole predator prey relationship that exists in nature, that could have, that could lead to ecological collapse. That's what I'm talking about, that downstream negative consequences, where then, all the lions are gone because we get rid of all the lions, or move them or whatever, and then the deer overpopulate and eat up all the vegetation, and then slowly starve to death.
I got you. I just don't ever want you to go. I could just imagine reading a headline: Chase got mauled in the savannah trying to break up a fight. So all of this is us talking around eating meat. This is us, circling the edges and seeing where we can get a foot in, get a toe in, and draw hard lines. One of them is the idea of justified meat eating, and the other is that meat eating is unjustified and not justifiable. And so when I bring up rights and protections, I think animals are treated differently than humans. We have protections for animals. And we have protections for even some humans. But rights are different. And we grant rights to humans and we don't grant rights to animals.
So far. And I'm not even sure if that's entirely true, because I think it might be true that some animals do have certain rights, legal rights in and of themselves. But even if that's not true yet, doesn't mean that we can't change that.
Well,
or that we shouldn't change that.
Agreed.
Because I think animal rights is a good idea, and it's just limited rights, like we were talking about with disabled people or children.
So let's keep it on animals for a second. Otherwise, it's going to get really. Let's for just a second, keeping this on animals. If there is a protection that says we will not tolerate animal suffering, right? Animals should be protected from unnecessary suffering at the hands of humans. Let's be really specific
and
here.
Death. And death.
Death comes for us all, Chase. But
I'm wondering if you're trying to make a humane slaughter exemption.
I feel like that needs to be separated, just because I feel like there are other conversations to be had on death specifically. But even if we just talked about suffering, right? That if there was a right and a protection, both of them said animal suffering not allowed. What makes protections worse or better? Like, it sounds like you're arguing against the word protection, even if they have the same effect.
Sure. If they have the same effect, then it's just semantics, I think. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what word we use, unless what is actually, the legal ramifications, that maybe protections don't have enough strength behind them legally than rights do compared to rights. I don't know.
I mean, you and I live in the United States. Rights seems like more like a suggestion than anything out here sometimes. I don't think it's semantic though. If I'm going to use the language that I absolutely don't like, but what I was taught is that humans are imbued with rights, right? Either by a creator or by the government that has decided that, it is going to recognize some fundamental truth about humans, and that humans have the right to thrive, have the right to what's the word? To fair and just governance.
Self-determination.
Yeah, self-determination is the word. Thank you, Chase. You knew exactly where I was going with that. And that is not recognized in animals. Self-determination is not a concept that's recognized in animals. Whether it should be or not, I don't know. I don't know what the best version of an animal is of itself, but I do know what a well-protected animal is. My cat, I adore her. I will protect her. And if she is sick, I will take her to the vet, and I will give her cuddles and attention and good food for the rest of her natural life. And I don't see like that is fundamentally different from, a sense of self-determination for humans. And I think that somewhere in there is where I have my idea of the difference between rights and protections. And I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I
Going back to
mean,
the Christianity end of it, I think that's the piece is that Adam was imbued with this task, this charge that all humans are supposed to be the stewards of the earth,
yeah,
and
and I just think that.
I still
Oh, go
treat
ahead.
no. I'm just rambling. I guess I'm just saying that I feel like I still treat animals like there's a sense of stewardship there, whether it's
Yeah.
justified or not. It's definitely kind of condescending, I guess.
Well, I mean, I mean, they're not as smart as us, that's for sure. Like, but and I feel like we just got to use our power to, responsibly. And I just think that if we're trying to be caretakers, if we're trying to be compassionate, then there's no room for a kill floor in that scenario.
When you say kill floor, are you talking
Like
about
like a
where you go like a
slaughterhouse.
slaughterhouse? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Because they have lives that matter to them, and they're sentient, they're able to experience pleasure and pain, and if they have years of natural life ahead of them, I want to let them live that out for as long as they can, right? I don't want to
yes,
take
but
away their existence just for my own benefit if I don't need to.
I understand that, and that comes off as very compassionate about you, Chase. And I can't hear that without there being an asterisk that my mind puts on the end of that. And the asterisk there is yes, but not in the same way that I do for humans.
Well, it doesn't even have to be that though. Like I'm not saying necessarily that you have to value all humans and all animals equally. It's just valuing animals more than a snack, right? Because we can have we can have other snacks.
I'm sorry. It is a weird day. I was just before the show I was watching a video about the stuff coming out about P Diddy, and I feel like P Diddy treated humans like snacks too.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
But
if I could bring it back to the Bible real quick
yeah.
and then let you go, just a few more points. So, like after the flood, Noah's flood, right? That's when God says, "Okay, just as I had given you every plant to be your food, now I give you every animal, everything that has the breath of life and crawls across the earth shall be your food." Which I
Oh,
find strange because that must include dogs and cats and monkeys. You know?
yeah. Actually, it's a whole lot further. Further back. God does in the Bible. God does not grant permission to eat meat there. In fact, the first two sons of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, one of them was a farmer, and the other was a shepherd. And the whole reason Cain killed Abel is because God preferred Abel's offering of the cooked meat. God loved the smell of barbecue, and was way more favorable towards that. And so the farmer Cain killed his brother Abel because he was jealous of that. So you definitely have raising and slaughtering earlier than the flood.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to look into that some more. I've forgotten about that. And
Mm.
then in the New Testament, Jesus, there was a possessed guy, or in a different gospel, it says there were two possessed guys. But either way, possessed dude, Jesus comes along and removes all the demons from the possessed dude and sends the demons into some pigs,
Hmm.
and the pigs
Run off a
crazily
cliff.
run off a cliff and die,
Yeah.
and that's not cool. Like, well,
But
that's not cool at
but
all.
but if we're looking at a biblical view, then it definitely demonstrably shows that animals are treated as lesser, right?
Yeah,
And
it does.
yeah, yeah. The
But Jesus
d-
couldn't Jesus have gotten rid of the demons without killing the pigs?
you would think, but it makes for a cool story. Like
Yeah.
if you just treated it as a cool story, I think it would be so like nice. It's just treated as so much more. Do you remember the name of the demon, by the way, that got cast into the pigs?
No.
Legion.
Legion, that's
What
right.
is your name? Legion, because we are many. Yep. So anyway, Chase, I feel like we could bat this around forever. And I know there's a stronger argument to be made about rights and protections. And right now, I'm not doing it justice. And I think that if I continue to talk about it without really like formulating my thoughts, I'm going to make things muddy and confuse things more.
That's
So
all right.
how about I do some research and we talk again?
Okay, sounds good. And I'll see you in the after show for a little bit.
All right, and just for people watching, Chase and I have disagreed plenty of times, but this is an example of two people seeing the humanity in each other and respecting each other and having a good discussion. It can happen. This is what it looks like, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Chase.
All right, good times. We'll see you.
Take care.